Hey guys, Gameboy38 here once again, and I'm going to be going over my top 5 favorite projects that I have done. Now this will also be going over some canceled projects that you may or may not have heard of, and some possible future projects. So if you're interested in all of that, then stick with us. Alright, so number 5 on this list is the silver Alienware build I did quite a few years ago. I originally bought it at a flea market for $35, and the case was actually in pretty good shape, but the internal components were all dead. It was only a motherboard and heatsink really, and nothing else except for the fans. That's it. So I tossed out the old dead hardware and replaced it with the guts of an Alienware Aurora R2. This had an i7-920 overclocked to 3.8 gigahertz. Of course, an Alienware Aurora R2 motherboard, a EVGA GTX 670, 10 gigabytes of DDR3 1333 megahertz, and two 250 gigabyte hard drives, the same ones actually used in my recent Project Envy build. Interestingly enough, I still do have the case, so I possibly could do something with it again. Coming up to number 4 is Project Puny. It's my most recent ITX build. That's actually my second ITX build. The first one had a Celeron thing and no GPU. It was just an interesting thing to get up and running to resell. I didn't mean to actually do any testing with it. Project Puny came out much better than the first one, obviously. Puny was attempted to be more NVIDIA themed than anything, with the green case and the GTX card, but it actually sold without the GTX card, so whatever. Specs, it had a i5 6600K overclocked to 4 GHz, an ASRock Z170M ITX AC motherboard, and 8 GB of DDR4 2800 MHz, and it had an MSI GTX 960, along with a 512 GB SSD. Coming up to number 3 is Project Magma, my first all AMD build. I did some AMD builds in the past. One with a quad-core FX 4130, I think? That was a long time ago. It was actually, I think, my very first, or one of my very first builds I did. So that one's got a place in my heart, but Magma, it's the newest, it's got all the newest hardware, or it had all the newest hardware, because unfortunately a sudden money issue popped up, and I had to sell it before I could ever get any proper use and testing done. Yeah. And, well, while it lasted, the specs were an FX 9590 at 5 GHz, an MSI R9 390X, 16 GB of 2133 MHz DDR3, a 500 GB SSHD hybrid, and an Asus Sabertooth 990FX motherboard. Coming in at number 4 is my current and longest lasting project, Project Bolide. It's gone through many renditions, so I'm just calling it Project Bolide, really. It has tons of time and money put into it, and has some really rare hardware that you can no longer get. And I don't plan on stopping the project anytime soon. It still has some more things that need to be added to be complete. Like a 6960X or whatever Broadwell E is going to be called. And I'm trying to get a third 980 Ti in it. Its specs are an i7 5820K at 4.4 GHz, a GTX 980 Ti Hall of Fame LN2 edition, and the Hall of Fame GTX 980 Ti LN2 GOC edition. It's got a 512 GB SSD along with 5.5 TB of hard drive storage. It has the first X99 EWS motherboard. I want to get the new one with the USB 3.1 and Type-C ports, but I guess that can wait. And finally, 32 gigabytes of DDR4 2800 megahertz. And now number one, my favorite project I've done is Project Envy. I used a rare half-X NVIDIA edition case, and I set all of the hardware in this build to the time period of when the case came out, so 2009, 2010. So I used it for over a week to experiment whether you could still use that 6 or 7 year old hardware even today in 2016. And it turns out you can. You can see all of my testing done in a playlist that I did, and it did really good. Specs, it has an i7 960 at 4.2 gigahertz, an EVGA GTX 570 classified GPU, 12 gigabytes of 1033 megahertz DDR3 memory, and an EVGA X58 3X SLI motherboard, and two 250 gigabyte hard drives. The same ones used in the Illinois build, actually. So that was my top 5 projects I've done throughout the years. And now I have a few canceled projects that I'd like to discuss. First one is Project Magma. It wasn't really canceled, it was just cut short because of the money issue that I really don't want to get into. So yeah, I'd like to try to do that again. Project Magma 2.0, I guess it'd be called. So yeah, that'll be cool. Next canceled project is Project Exodia. That huge yellow little devil case I had was set to be the main piece of it, but the case was really valuable, so I just decided to sell it on its own, and then I never got back up with the idea. And then, third canceled project that I want to talk about is Project Bolide 1.5. So this came up before 2.0, and then after the 4690K system. So, in case you didn't know, Project Bolide used to be a complete beast. It had a 5960X overclocked to 4 gigahertz. It was actually a terrible overclocking chip. That's part of the reason why. I sold it along with the 2 Galax GTX 980 Ti Hall of Fame graphics cards I had in it to try to get a Xeon E5 2699 V3 18-core chip. And then I realized that that wasn't ever going to happen. And I still had the motherboard, memory case, power supply, cooler, and everything else from the build just sitting in the corner doing literally nothing. So I rebuilt it with a 5820K and a GTX 970. And then it moved to a pair of GTX 960s, and then into the configuration you see now with the twin 980 Ti's. And now we're going to move on to possible future projects. These are ones that I have not really discussed yet. I may have hinted at, but never fully discussed them. And they could still happen. Now the first one is Project Vermivorous. This is named after the Borderlands 2 raid boss. In case you didn't know, I did a lot of Borderlands 2 playing early this year. And I really got into it and wanted to make a computer out of it. And Vermivorous seemed like a perfect candidate. It would use a Corsair Graphite 230T orange case with red LED fans and a custom-painted yellow front panel. Custom-painted by me. It would have an AMD GPU because red. And I am still considering doing this build. If you would like to see something like this, then please go ahead and let me know. And then the last future project I'm going to discuss today is actually not even really a project. It's going to be dubbed Project Supremacy, but it's just a new name for Project Bolide once it gets more new hardware, like another 980 Ti and a Broadwell E6960X or whatever it's going to be called. Although I suppose it could be its own system as well. So let me know if you want to see that. Project Supremacy, because racist joke, it'll be all white. Not being racist, but I think it'll look really sweet being completely white. Having a white power supply, having a white motherboard, a white memory kit, a white cooler, white everything. I think it'll be really cool looking. But yeah. Or it'll just be the new name for Bolide if the Bolide name ever decides to be retired. But that's going to be it for this video. If you like any of these projects or have been around since the old projects like Project Magma and the Silver Alienware, then please go ahead and let me know. I'd actually like to see who's still with me after all these years. And I guess that's going to be it for this video. If you enjoyed, then please go ahead and leave a like, favorite, comment, share, and of course subscribe. Thanks, Game Boy out. I will see you in the next video.